He was a poor ugly loser who was bullied by a criminal classmate, but one day he discovered the KFC Man video and learned how to fight like Conor McGregor, so he decided to take revenge and beat up the bullies. The story starts that the newtuber Pakgo had reached 700,000 followers. To celebrate his 700,000 followers, his classmate beauty newtuber friend Rumi joined in his livestream. Then we see Hoban, who was made up like a clown and he hated being bullied every day. Meanwhile, his classmates made fun of him and ignored Hoban's humiliation. Suddenly Pakgo threatened him to smile, and Hoban pretended he loved being made up like a zesty clown. Pakgo also promised his viewers that they could win a PlayStation 5 by subscribing to his channel, but Hoban knew it was just a scam. After the live stream ended, he was in the washroom and he became the Joker. He didn't want to go to school anymore, and he hated that the two newtubers got a lot of money by bullying him. He then went back into the classroom and Pakgo's cameraman Snapper began attacking him with a Kung Fu Panda kick. Snapper was also a bully and Hoban hated him too, but he knew that Snapper was a weakling. Suddenly he glared at Snapper, and Snapper started to get scared. He tried to play it down, and Hoban knew that without Pakgo, Snapper would be nothing. While Hoban was on the ground, Rumi thanked Pakgo for earning 30,000 yen because of their live stream. Hoban was shocked that they had made a ton of money in such a short time. At that moment, Hoban and Snapper had the same idea because they were thinking about becoming newtubers. Next, Snapper asked Pakgo what he needed to start a channel, so Pakgo told him that he needed his parents' account and a bank book. Suddenly, Snapper had the idea to use Hoban's bank account to start his NewTube channel. He asked Hoban if his mother was still alive, and Hoban was shocked at the question. Pakgo started laughing and made fun of him by saying that Hoban's mother must have died long ago. Broski was angry, but he knew he was a weakling and decided not to defend his mother. Later, he visited his seriously ill mother in the hospital, and she was worried about her son because he had bruises on his face. He lied to her and said that he slipped on a banana. Afterwards, Hoban paid the cost of the hospital bills. He also went to his job at McDonald's and realized that even though he works so hard, he is still broke. But one thing always gave him hope, and that was the smile of his goddess named Bomi. Bomi was a 10 out of 10, and he had a big crush on her because she was cuter than Kylie Jenner. He also always blushed when looking at the idol of their restaurant. A few moments later, Pakgo showed up at McDonald's, and Hoban was shocked to see him with his cameraman Snapper. Pakgo thought he was famous like IShowSpeed and planned to rizz up the goddess Bomi. So he tried to diddy her and ordered the Krabby Patty Double Big Mac without pickles. At the same time, Hoban knew that Bomi would never be able to make the burger in 30 seconds. Then Pakgo demanded Bomi's number, if he didn't get the burger in 30 seconds. Suddenly, Hoban saved his crush and served a Krabby Patty without pickles so that Pakgo wouldn't get Bomi's number. As a result, Hoban had saved her, but he knew he would be beaten up at school tomorrow. Meanwhile, Bomi realized that Hoban got Riz, and she started to see Hoban as her hero. In the evening, Hoban cooked ramen noodles for Snapper, and he was ashamed of it. Because he let Snapper into his house, and out of fear, he gave Snapper his mother's bank details to start a NewTube channel. Following this, he spat like the Hawktua girl into Snapper's ramen bowl before serving it to him. On the way, he stumbled, and Snapper wondered why his monitor went off. As he looked at Hoban, a hot bowl of ramen flew at him. He was shocked by this and decided to beat up Hoban. Hoban apologized, and he hated being beaten up in his own house. Suddenly, Snapper insulted his mother, but this time Hoban decided to fight back. He fought back for the first time in his life and hit Snapper. They started fighting and Hoban grabbed the kimchi that was lying on the floor. They were waging an absurd battle, but they had forgotten that the live stream hadn't ended yet. Then we see Gail, who discovered the stream, and she found it very interesting. Next, Hoban couldn't sleep because he knew he was a broke, ugly loser. He wished he had been born rich and was ashamed of being a weakling. Then he turned off the power and tried to forget the day. The next morning he woke up and Snapper called him. He ordered Hoban to delete a video, and Hoban didn't know what Snapper was talking about. A few seconds passed, and Hoban spotted the cable he had tripped over yesterday. He understood that his fight with Snapper was streamed yesterday by beating Snapper with kimchi. Snapper was ashamed and cried because he was embarrassed that everyone saw him getting beaten with kimchi. Then Hoban opened his NewTube app and he realized his video had gone viral. Hoban understood that he has gone from being bullied locally to being bullied globally. After thinking about what would become of his life, he looked at his phone again. He read the comments and learned that he could get money for his clicks. When he realized that this would make him filthy rich, he started to smile. A few hours later, some students watched the video of their embarrassing fight. Suddenly, Snapper arrived in the classroom and he knew he was becoming a joke. He planned to play it down and found a loser to bully. Then he attacked a nerd, but the nerd fought him back. So Snapper was beaten up, and he realized that no one would help him. Meanwhile, Pakgo also laughed at Snapper, and Snapper knew it was his end. He understood that he was the new laughingstock of the school. We then see Hoban in the hospital, and he learned that the hospital bills are more than his monthly wages at McDonald's. He was shocked about it, but he was able to pay for it with newtuber money. Later he thought about how he could get more money, but Snapper found him and hit him in his ugly face. Snapper cried and wanted half of Hoban's newtuber money. Hoban was a menace because he kicked between Snapper's legs to serve scrambled eggs. Snapper got smoked, and Hoban didn't plan to share his newtuber money with Snapper. Then they started fighting again, and Hoban was no longer afraid of Snapper. After the fight, he cheered up Snapper, but he still refused to share the money with Snapper. Suddenly, Snapper revealed that he had taken a video of their fight outside the hospital. Hoban thought that Snapper was trying to bully him even more. At that moment, Snapper made Hoban an offer because he wanted to become Hoban's partner. He convinced Hoban by saying that they could make a lot of money together. Hoban didn't want to be a loser anymore and wanted to become the next Mr. Beast on YouTube. Snapper wanted to be the producer of Hoban's channel. That's when Hoban realized it was going to rain money, and he thought about it. Meanwhile, Snapper planned to be the next Shook Knight and take advantage of Hoban by creating an unfair contract. Snapper then extended his hand to Hoban, but Hoban didn't fall for it. He knew that Snapper was not his friend and refused the partnership. Snapper was shocked that Hoban declined the offer. Suddenly Snapper said that he only wants 10% of the revenue. Hoban played the Uno reverse card, and he got a cameraman for a discount like a real chiga. The next day, Hoban and Snapper were forced by Pakgo to join his live stream. Suddenly, Snapper told Hoban to make his move. While Pakgo was trying to get more viewers, Hoban decided to tell the truth about Pakgo. He told the audience that Pakgo was a bully who did a lot of bad things to him. The reason Hoban revealed the truth about Pakgo was because he planned to steal Pakgo's subscribers. Then we see many students watching, and Gail walking past Hoban's classroom. She heard that Hoban was going to get beaten up, and wanted to know what was going on. Meanwhile, Snapper was sure that his plan will work, but Pakgo started to smile. Hoban learned that Pakgo's live stream had long since ended because his battery died. He was shocked by this, and Pakgo planned to take revenge. That's when he started slapping Hoban and started beating him up. Hoban looked at Snapper, and he had already initiated their real plan. Then we learned that he had started an own live stream on Hoban's channel. As a result, viewers learned about Pakgo that he was a mean bully who beat up weaker students. While Hoban was being beaten, he looked at his new friend. Although he wanted to make money, he wondered if viewers would even want to see him get beaten up. At that moment he decided to get into a fighting stance and defend himself. Pakgo became angry at the sight of Hoban and the audience loved it. Snapper was surprised and admired Hoban for having the courage to face Pakgo. A few moments later, Hoban realized that no one was stopping their fight. He began to realize how fearsome Pakgo was and took a closer look at his opponent. He realized he looked like a thug from the Bronx. Afterwards, Hoban began to shake and wondered if he should try to apologize. Suddenly Pakgo started insulting his mother and Hoban couldn't ignore it. He remembered the last time Pakgo insulted his mother, who got cancer. Hoban got angry and decided to attack his enemy with all his strength. Everyone was surprised by this, and he thought that he was cooking. Unfortunately, his attack failed because he was a weakling. He got an emotional damage and Pakgo decided to punish Hoban. Pakgo did the John Cena and slammed Hoban into the ground with a WWE move. Hoban was shocked that a person's weight could make such a difference. Then Pakgo planned to attack again, but someone told them to keep it down a little. Pakgo realized that he was disturbing MMA fighter Munseong's nap. He apologized and the chat was surprised to see him. Hoban was also impressed because Munseong made the whole room tense with just a few words. Afterwards Munseong fell asleep again and Pakgo left the room. Snapper thought Hoban was cool despite his loss to Pakgo. In the evening Pakgo charged his phone and was happy that no one knew the truth. Suddenly he read his comments and found out about Hoban's live stream. At the same time Hoban was happy, and he felt like a top G for exposing the truth about Pakgo. Everyone learned that Pakgo was a bully and Pakgo's subscribers were shocked about it. As a result, Pakgo's aura dropped to -10,000 and his subscribers unfollowed him for these reasons. A few days later it was all over the media and Pakgo was in despair. During this time, Hoban gained many new subscribers and wanted to become the next Mr. Beast. A week passed, and Snapper told Hoban that their main contents were going to be fights. But they had a problem, because in order to use advertising in their videos, he had to last longer than 1 minute in a fight. Hoban understood that they had a big problem and thought about how he could last a fight longer than 3 minutes. Following this, he searched for solutions on Google to solve his problem. Unfortunately, he found nothing and learned that learning to fight would take a long time. Suddenly, he had the idea to look for solutions on YouTube and found the KFC man, who taught people how to fight. Hoban watched the channel and was surprised because the videos had no views. Samdak introduced himself and Hoban learned the first rule. Suddenly Samdak wanted to teach him how to get hit without getting hurt, and Hoban found it too suspicious. He thought Samdak's tutorial video was a scam and went to sleep. The next day, he went to McDonald's and he decided to quit his part-time job because his salary wasn't enough to pay his mom's hospital bills. Then we see some part-timers talking about Hoban's decision to quit. Bomi was shocked that her hero wouldn't work with her anymore. A few moments later, the manager made fun of Hoban for wanting to become a newtuber. Suddenly Bomi appeared, and he said that she thinks he's cool. She also asked Hoban for his number and thanked him for saving her from Pakgo. In the days that followed, Hoban wrote to Bowman, and he smiled the whole time. Snapper asked why he looked so happy, and Hoban didn't tell him about Bomi. Then Snapper asked him if he had yet figured out how to solve their problem with surviving a fight longer than 3 minutes. Hoban thought about the KFC man, but he knew it was too suspicious. Snapper was disappointed and angry, because Hoban still hadn't found a solution to their problem. Suddenly Rumi appeared and wanted to start a live stream with Hoban. She convinced him by taking advantage of her OnlyFans Riz. A few moments later, Pakgo appeared in the classroom, and he wanted revenge on Hoban. At that moment, he remembered the advice of Samdak, who taught him to exploit his opponent's emotions in such moments. He remembered enemies trying to attack immediately in anger, and Hoban was shocked that it was true. Hoban realized that the KFC man was right and planned to get hit without getting hurt. Suddenly Snapper intervened and he took out his camera. Pakgo stopped because he didn't want to lose any more subscribers. As a result, he decided to withdraw, but he threatened them and planned to take revenge on them somehow. Snapper was relieved that his plan had worked. Meanwhile, Hoban was deep in thought, understanding that Samdak's tutorial videos could teach him how to fight. After school he waited for Snapper because they wanted to talk about their content. He realized that fighting as their theme was harder than he thought. Then he decided to write a message to Bomi, and started smiling. He acted like Ray, and tried to slide in her DMs with his Taiwanese Riz. Suddenly 2 fans who had seen Hoban's video appeared. They complimented him and planned to take advantage of him. A few moments passed and Hoban was in big trouble because the thugs were trying to rob him. Snapper tried to save his friend and ran towards the thug. But Snapper's rescue attempt failed, and he was immediately knocked out. The thug then ordered Hoban to give him his phone. He was sad that his phone was stolen because he couldn't reply to Bomi's message yet. Suddenly he tried to convince the thug to steal Snapper's phone because he had an iPhone 20. However, Snapper told his partner that he had started a live stream. The audience wanted to see Hoban fight the thug and get his phone back. Additionally, Snapper told Hoban that they would make a ton of money. That's when Hoban decided to fight and make a lot of money from his live stream. A few moments later, Hoban stood in front of the thug who had stolen his phone. He looked at his opponent and remembered that he had to figure out what his opponent's dominant hand was. After finding out that the thug was right-handed, he prepared for battle. He followed Samdak's lesson and planned to get hit without getting hurt. Suddenly his opponent attacked, and Hoban tested out his new skill. It was a complete success, and he suffered no injuries. The reason for this was that he had used his forehead to resist the blow. Snapper was shocked by this and thought that Hoban was hit in the face, but Hoban felt no pain at all and the thug planned to attack again. Suddenly Hoban realized that he can't react in time, and he thought he would be fried, but his opponent missed. So Hoban took advantage of the next lesson he had learned. Next, Hoban started moving all the time, managing to dodge the blows with ease. Everyone was surprised by this and the thug got angry. While Hoban dodged, he also used his forehead as a shield to avoid getting hurt. Afterwards, he asked for his phone back and said that he needs to reply to Bomi. Hoban was cooking and everyone was impressed because a weak loser managed to stand up against a thug. A few moments later, Hoban realized he had made a mistake, because he hadn't watched the other videos to learn how to attack. As a result, he became desperate, and Snapper realized that their video was getting boring. He didn't want to lose any spectators and considered stopping the fight. Suddenly a person commented that Hoban will win, and Snapper remembered that this subscriber knew a lot about the martial arts world. Everyone thought that Hoban would lose, but the subscriber commented that they should take a closer look. The subscriber pointed out that the thug's hands were injured. Suddenly the guy stopped and Hoban was surprised because he won the fight. Hoban was seriously injured, but he got his phone back. He planned to answer Bomi immediately and ask her if she was bathing. The chat learned that Hoban had no Riz, but they were happy about his victory. In addition, his channel grew, and he received many new subscribers. A few days later, he received his first payout and he was happy about it. Then he looked at the money he had earned and asked himself whether he should invest it in Bitcoin. Afterwards, Hoban immediately wanted to make more videos to make even more money. He wanted to be famous like Kai Cenat, but Snapper replied that they were lucky that they didn't get the yellow mark. However, he learned that when making videos, they have to pay attention to NewTube's proprietary censorship system. Then they spotted Rumi in front of the convenience store, and she was streaming live. Suddenly, she looked into the convenience store, and Snapper had a bad feeling. She discovered Hoban and planned to use him to increase her fame, but Snapper saved his friend. Next, Hoban spotted a Gucci tracksuit, and he wanted to look like Central C. When he looked at the price, he realized that he could buy 100 similar tracksuits for that price. He wasn't planning on buying it, but Snapper went into the Gucci store and bought it. However, Snapper said that they are top Gs, and he needs to reward himself too. Hoban thought about it, but he was always broke, so he decided not to buy anything. Suddenly, he received a message from Bomi, and he changed his mind. The next day we see Hoban in his Gucci tracksuit. He was nervous because he had a date with Bomi. Hoban decided to start a livestream to calm himself down, but some people recognized him. They began to badmouth him, and Hoban learned that being famous wasn't always a good thing. Suddenly a girl appeared who said she was a big fan. Hoban thought he misunderstood something because a handsome K-pop star was standing behind him. He embarrassed himself and he got an emotional damage. After that, K-pop star Jiwoon discovered Bomi and he tried to rizz her up. But he got rejected and she was glad to see Hoban. She also liked Hoban's tracksuit because they were matching. Then we learned that Hoban was always jealous of the popular kids, because he was bad at school and also at sports. Hoban wished he was at least a good fighter. He also admired Munseong because he was the strongest and no one messed with him. But the moment he realized that Bomi was having fun being with him, he didn't care anymore. Then we see the two in the park, and Bomi accidentally touched Hoban's hand. At that moment he started daydreaming, and he dreamed of being married to Bomi and living a happy life. In this dream, he also had 2 children who loved him. Suddenly he woke up from his daydream, and Bomi wondered why he was spacing out. He embarrassed himself in front of his crush, and somehow caused a misunderstanding. Then he thought that Bomi was bored with him, and heard a couple bad-mouthing him because he and Bomi were wearing the same outfit. He knew he was a loser, and took off his tracksuit because he didn't want to embarrass Bomi. Later they ordered a strawberry parfait, and Bomi tried to give him signs that she liked him. Hoban didn't notice her signs because he had no experience with girls. Suddenly she decided to leave because she thought Hoban didn't like her. Before she left, Hoban stopped her and told her that he was nervous because he had never talked with such a cute girl before. He told her the truth, and his aura got plus 30,000. Following this, he started telling her that he thinks she is the prettiest girl in the world, and Bomi started to blush. She was glad he told her the truth, and she started not ending the date. Meanwhile, Gail had been watching him, and was impressed by his honesty. Next, Bomi received a call from a childhood friend, and Hoban smiled because he felt like he was her boyfriend. Suddenly, Hoban learned that her friend from grade school, who she hasn't seen for a long time, was Munseong. Hoban was shocked that she was friends with the rising star in the world of MMA. Hoban started daydreaming again, and was afraid that his future with Bomi won't come true because she will start a family with Munseong. In his dream, Munseong took away his family and the woman he loved. Afterwards, Bomi asked if he knew Munseong, and Hoban panicked. He replied that he was friends with Munseong because he wanted to hide the fact that he was a loser. Suddenly Bomi spotted Munseong and Hoban regretted his answer. Bomi was happy to see Munseong, and she asked him about his friendship with Hoban. Suddenly Bomi looked at Hoban, and Hoban thought that he will never see Bomi's cute smile again. He was ready to say goodbye to Bomi, but Munseong saved him. He then asked for Hoban's name, and Hoban was totally confused. Additionally, Munseong noticed that they were wearing the same tracksuit, and Hoban was glad that Munseong was a nice person. Next they were walking in the park together, and Hoban thought he was the 5th wheel on the wagon. Hoban decided to leave, saying his ingrown toenail was causing him pain. Bomi was sad, and Snapper secretly live-streamed his date. A few moments later, he was kidnapped by Snapper, and he was shocked that Hoban got no game. Hoban himself knew that his aura dropped to negative 100,000 because of his stupid excuse. Suddenly, Snapper made it clear to his friend that he couldn't give up. Snapper explained to him that he must fight for love. Then he said that LeBron James would die for the love of basketball. Hoban didn't understand what Snapper was talking about because he just told him nonsense. Despite everything, He knew that Snapper wanted to help him. So Snapper convinced his friend not to give up, and they hugged each other, but no Diddy. Following this, Hoban went into battle again to win Bomi's heart. Meanwhile, the chat was laughing because Snapper was just motivating Hoban not to give up so he could make a funny video. Then we see Hoban and Bomi was worried about Hoban's toenail. He explained that everything was fine and Munseong left. Hoban learned that he didn't have to worry at all, because Munseong only stopped by because he wanted to try the strawberry parfait. Before Munseong left, he told Hoban that he was a good fighter, because he watched Hoban's fights and was impressed by the blows he took against the thug. Suddenly, he asked if Hoban hadn't done the next move on purpose. Hoban was surprised by this and wondered if he also watches the KFC Man channel. Later, he continued his date with Bomi, and Hoban became very nervous. He asked her what type of guys she likes, and she replied that she likes honest people. Then Hoban was about to tell her that she was his ideal type, but he suddenly stopped. The reason for this was that he noticed Snapper filming him. When he looked at Snapper, he realized that Snapper was getting beaten up. At that moment, Pakgo appeared behind him, and he planned to take revenge on Hoban. Not wanting to put Bomi in danger, Hoban told her to run away. But Pakgo didn't allow it and attacked Bomi. He insulted Bomi, and Hoban remembered that Samdak taught him to stay calm. He then provoked Pakgo and challenged him to a fight. Pakgo attacked Hoban, but his attempt to block the blow with his forehead failed. Then Hoban remembered Samdak explaining to him that the same trick doesn't work twice. Hoban didn't know what to do because he hadn't watched the next videos from Samdak. Then Pakgo ran towards him, and his mind was completely blank. Hoban began to remember how he had always been bullied. He thought newtuber would change his miserable life. He also realized that the money and fame made him forget about studying fighting. When he came back to his senses, he was badly injured from Pakgo's beating. He wanted to go home, and Pakgo planned to humiliate him in front of Bomi. Hoban asked Pakgo to let Bomi go, but he didn't listen to him and attacked Hoban again. Hoban didn't want his crush to find out that he was a weakling. But he decided to kneel in front of Pakgo and asked for forgiveness so that Bomi wouldn't get hurt. Suddenly, he ordered Hoban to show the Diddy trick, and Snapper apologized to his friend because he was forced to start a live stream. Then Bomi slapped Pakgo, and Hoban was shocked. Pakgo planned to beat Bomi in front of the camera, but Hoban decided to sacrifice himself to save the woman he loves. Hoban started taking off his pants, and he went even further to get Pakgo's channel banned. Before he was able to show his meat, Munseong appeared. He saved Hoban from humiliation, but his pride was wounded. Afterwards, he beat up Pakgo's friends and he was cooking. Pakgo was terribly afraid of Munseong and asked for forgiveness, but he showed no mercy. He asked Bomi if she was okay, and Munseong understood that he should leave because Hoban got an emotional damage. So he brought Bomi home and left Hoban alone. Meanwhile, Gale had been watching Hoban and went home too. At that moment, Hoban wondered when he became a loser. He realized that he became a loser after he met Pakgo, who bullied him daily for no reason. Because of Pakgo, he began to look fear in other people's eyes. Then we see Hoban, who started crying, and Snapper said sorry. A few days later, Pakgo started a live stream to become more famous than Kai Sanat. Then he pointed the camera at Snapper, and he was only worried about Hoban because he had been skipping school for several days. Later we see Bomi trying to call Hoban, but he didn't answer the phone. Hoban watched Samdak's videos. He also trained to become stronger, and did the One Punch Man challenge. Samdak explained him the basics for becoming a UFC fighter like Conor McGregor. As a result, Hoban was motivated and planned to train for a month. Snapper proved he was a true friend and warned Hoban to stay home. But Hoban was no longer afraid and he planned to change his life. Then Hoban gave his phone to Snapper, and he realized that a live stream had started. Snapper was confused, but Hoban asked his friend to film. Hoban got balls out of steel, and he challenged Pakgo to a fight. Then we see a few hours earlier, and Snapper congratulated Rumi for reaching 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. At the same time, he missed Hoban because he hadn't come to school for a month. But he needed a job and wanted to become Rumi's producer. Suddenly, Pakgo showed up and he bullied Snapper for being Hoban's bestie. Pakgo was disgusted with Snapper and asked him if he wasn't ashamed of being such a pathetic loser. Everyone looked down on Snapper, and he himself knew that he was a loser without friends. Then Pakgo started his live stream, and he reached 900,000 subscribers. He became the school gangster PewDiePie, and Snapper was frustrated because viral hits subscriber count keeps falling. Afterwards, Pakgo had the idea to take Hoban to school and bully him before his live stream. Snapper wasn't planning on selling his friend, but he didn't want to be bullied anymore. That afternoon he visited Hoban's mother in the hospital to find out Hoban's address again. Snapper learned that his mom didn't know that Hoban was skipping the school. Although he had a bad conscience, he decided to give Pakgo Hoban's address. But the next day, Snapper decided not to betray his friend, even if he will be bullied by Pakgo for the rest of his life. That's when Snapper trying to warn his friend to stay home so he doesn't get killed by Pakgo. Snapper proved he was a true friend, but Hoban was no longer afraid and he planned to change his life. Then Hoban gave his phone to Snapper and he realized that a live stream had started. Snapper was confused, but Hoban asked his friend to film. Viral Hits subscribers were excited, and Snapper was worried about his best friend. Then he realized that Hoban had handwritten some things on his hand to appear cool. However, Pakgo attacked, but Hoban managed to block it. Suddenly he started moving and Pakgo made fun of him. When Pakgo was about to attack, he remembered watching KFC Man's video. He learned that the same moves were no longer effective, but he wanted to see Bomi again and decided to study more about fighting. However, he cried for days and decided to watch the next fight lesson video. Samdak explained in the next video how Hoban can defeat regular persons in a fight. He said that he would have to train for a month to learn the next technique. The first step was to eat lots of protein for the next month. As a result, Hoban started making an old-school protein shake. The protein shake was disgusting and he thought he was dying. Suddenly, he found out that he could also buy Ronnie Coleman's whey protein. Step 2 was willpower to go from 0 to a superhero. After that, he learned Step 3 and Hoban was supposed to build up stamina by swimming. Instead of going to a swimming pool, he trained his stamina in a public bath. He looked ridiculous, but he was still cooking and hoped to gain a lot of muscles. Later, he took a break, and he learned that this training doesn't make any big changes. Despite everything, he should continue to build his muscle, and Samdak finally got around to explaining this special technique to him. Then we see an interview from a UFC fighter, which move he finds the strongest that a beginner can use. He said it wasn't a boxing move and Hoban had to put all his weight on his legs, then perform a rotating kick and put his full body weight into it. A brief moment later, we see Hoban using his new technique. He learned the famous low kick and managed to become a true UFC fighter. As a result, he managed to injure Pakgo, who was surprised by this technique. We then learned that Hoban had been practicing the low kick technique every day for a month. Hoban was determined to win the fight, but Pakgo didn't take Hoban's low kick seriously. He said that Hoban used the low kick incorrectly, but a subscriber said that Pakgo was wrong. Suddenly Munseong also commented, and he was impressed because Hoban had used the famous calf kick that caused instant damage. Museong knew it wasn't a beginner move because it could hurt even an amateur MMA fighter. Suddenly Pakgo became angry and tried to hit Hoban in the face. Hoban ran away, using the lessons he learned from newtuber. Then Hoban attacked again with a calf kick and everyone was surprised. Meanwhile, Munseong wondered why Hoban didn't make the next move. He thought that Hoban was holding back. A few seconds later, Pakgo began to gain the upper hand in the fight. Everyone thought Hoban would lose, but Hoban took the hits like a top G. He had changed in a month and continued to use his calf kick. Pakgo underestimated Hoban, but he was determined to win. Suddenly he used the next move and he hit Pakgo in the face. Pakgo flew into the wall and everyone was shocked by it. Hoban was the winner of the fight and was able to restore his honor. After the fight was over, Pakgo's friends wanted to avenge him. Snapper protected his friend and Hoban was happy to hear his words. Then Snapper thought that Pakgo's friends were intimidated because of him, but the real reason for this was that Munseong was standing behind them. Next he praised Hoban, but Hoban cried with joy. In addition, he began advertising his channel and asked viewers to subscribe. A few days passed, and Hoban realized that he had regained his peaceful life. Also, Pakgo's channel started losing subscribers while Viral Hit got bigger. He even reached 100,000 subscribers and thanked his fans for that. In the afternoon, he visited his mother in the hospital and he bought his mother an expensive gift. Then he learned that a friend had visited his mother. Meanwhile, Snapper was at the door, and he learned that Hoban was talking about Munseong. Snapper was disappointed, and he started hitting Hoban, but Hoban stopped Snapper's punch, and he was glad that he now had another good friend on his side. In the evening, Snapper suggested hiring an editor for Viral Hit. However, he told Hoban that they need to keep their videos exciting. Hoban didn't know how to do it. Suddenly, Snapper started a live stream, and they told their fans about the job. He asked their fans if some of them were interested to work for them. So he told the chat to write about their life circumstances. The chat spammed a lot of nonsense, and Hoban wasn't sure if one of these guys would make good editors. A few moments later, a person who spoke like an old man spoke up. This person claimed that he had already edited for Mr. Beast. The next day at school, Hoban looked at the subscriber's contact information. Snapper thought the guy was a creep and he told Hoban to block him. But Hoban wanted to give the person a chance because they made him a promise. Then a Gale appeared and she talked like an old man. She introduced herself, and the two newtube partners were surprised. Next, she was standing in front of Snapper, and he still couldn't believe that a girl was the person who had volunteered to edit their videos. Suddenly, Snapper pointed a finger on her to make fun of her, but she told him to stop. At that moment, Snapper fell in love with her, and he started daydreaming. He dreamed how Gail was married to him, and he brought her flowers. He looked like a Wall Street guy. After that, he woke up and he embarrassed himself in front of Gail because he drooled in front of her. Snapper tried to play it down, and she showed Hoban her editing skills. Next, Snapper tried to convince Hoban to hire Gail, but he wanted to see her skills first. He learned that she was very talented and wanted to see more. Suddenly, she showed him a video where you could see some of his nuts, and Hoban asked her to stop. He hired her, and Viral Hit got a new team member. Then Hoban asked why she wanted to edit for Viral Hit, even though she has such awesome editing skills. She kept it a secret, but the reason was that she saw the next Mr. Beast in Hoban when he fought Pakgo. After this, she joined and they announced it on their newtube channel. Meanwhile, Bomi was sad because Hoban had time for his newtube channel, but no time to call her back. Then she walked past a game park, and there were a lot of people standing in front of it. She looked into the game park and discovered Tahon, who had beaten up a bunch of thugs. At that moment, another thug appeared who disturbed Tahon while he was playing Street Fighters. Then we see our ugly loser, who was thin as a toothpick. Hoban was shown a video of Tahon competing in the MMA league. Then Hoban had to guess which martial arts Tahon mastered. Suddenly Snapper started laughing and said that he does Taekwondo. He thought that only the kicks in Taekwondo were strong and made fun of it. But Gail stopped him and said that he shouldn't underestimate Taekwondo. She explained to them that Taekwondo is a very powerful martial art that can completely destroy the opponent. She also said that once someone invited various expert martial artists to his dojo. The various experts measured their power and they quickly found that the Taekwondo expert had a strength of over 1,000. At that moment, Snapper understood how great Taekwondo was, and Hoban wanted to know why he should watch the videos. So Snapper told him that he should fight against Tahon for a new video. Afterwards, Gail said that even UFC fighter Mike Johnson admitted that Taekwondo's special move was one of his favorite moves. Then we see Tahon fighting a thug, and he used the special move. He did a roundhouse kick and destroyed his opponent with ease. Meanwhile, Hoban was wondering how he could win against a pro fighter like Tahon. He didn't want to fight against Tahon and refused. Next, we see Tahon at school, and we find out that he was once a very famous Taekwondo practitioner. But for some reason, he quit. Since then, he became a school bully and used his martial arts skills for evil deeds. Suddenly, he beat up one of his classmates and ordered NPC-1 to hand over his sneakers. Later, Hoban also found out about Tahon's actions, and he was terribly afraid. Hoban said he needs a reason to fight thugs because otherwise, he wouldn't be motivated. In the afternoon, Tahon was walking home, but he was approached by a friend of the guy he beat up yesterday. Tahon didn't listen at all and attacked one of them. He then asked for 100 yen, and Takao was surprised that Tahon knew Taekwondo. He underestimated Taekwondo and said that Taekwondo was children's play. Suddenly he attacked Tahon, but Tahon easily dodged. The thug leader realized that he screwed up and attacked Tahon. After the first kick, he attacked with a powerful roundhouse kick. Takao had no chance and couldn't block the kicks. Afterwards, Tahon asked for his 100 yen and ordered the NPC he beat up yesterday to give the money. Suddenly Tahon started crushing Takao to the ground, and the other thug was desperate. But Tahon showed no mercy and continued to kick Takao. Snapper secretly filmed the event and was shocked that Tahon was a psychopath. Tahon then looked in Snapper's direction, but he managed to hide. He later told Hoban about his video, and Hoban was glad his friend didn't get caught. At that moment, Tahon appeared in front of them, and Hoban knew that they would be jumped. Snapper tried to talk them out, but Gail showed up. She wanted to protect her friends and threatened to beat Tahon. Hoban thought it would escalate, but Gail was afraid of Tahon. However, they were in trouble and tried to somehow get out of it. Suddenly, Tahon said that he heard Hoban wanting to fight him. Then he started kicking Snapper, and he wanted Hoban's newtube channel. Hoban understood Tahon wasn't a common thug and that he takes the friends of his victims as hostage to get what he wants. A few moments later, Snapper was seriously injured, and he refused to hand over his friend's newtube channel. Suddenly, Tahon threatened Hoban, and Hoban sensed that Tahon was out of his league. Despite everything, he tried to land a calf kick. After his first attack failed, he used his overhand hook, but that technique didn't work either. Hoban didn't want to get beaten up by Tahon and didn't know what to do. Suddenly he was slapped and he was planning to give up his YouTube channel to save his friends. Later they were at the hospital and he noticed that Snapper was disappointed. Hoban thought he did the right thing, but Snapper was against his decision. Snapper replied that he didn't want to give up viral hit. Following this, he said that he was inspired by Hoban when a loser like him defeated a high school gangster. Additionally, he asked if Hoban didn't have pride. He replied that he has no pride and Tahon wasn't an ordinary thug because he was a pro martial artist. Hoban was scared and knew he had no chance of winning. Next he walked out of the room. At the same time Gale appeared. Snapper tried to downplay the fact that he was sad. He also sent Gale out, saying he needed time to rest. When Gale left the room, Snapper began to cry in anger. The reason for this was that he had embarrassed himself in front of his crush. Then we see Hoban, and he heard Snapper crying. Hoban understood his friend's feeling because he had been through the same thing before. A few days later we see Tahon playing Street Fighters 2 in the game park. Then Hoban showed up and asked if he could use the machine. After the two boys left, they learned that someone had defeated Tahon in Street Fighters. Hoban had defeated him to make his opponent angry. Everything went according to plan, and Tahon stared at Hoban like he was going to kill him. Next, Hoban said that he will give his YouTube channel to Tahon. But first, Tahon had to defeat him in a fight. Tahon was surprised, and the chat thought he was tripping because Hoban had challenged a pro martial artist to a fight. Hoban was nuts, and Tahon got angry because Hoban continued to provoke him. Following this, Tahon destroyed an arcade machine with a kick. After that, Hoban told his friends how he challenged Tahon, and Gale was worried about Hoban. Snapper wondered why Hoban wanted to fight Tahon, and he didn't say that he did it because of his friend. Afterwards, he immediately went home and watched KFC Man to learn new fighting techniques. Lesson 3 taught him how to beat a Taekwondo fighter in a fight as a regular person. After doing the first exercise, Samdak told him to imagine a fight against a Taekwondo fighter. Hoban imagined himself in a ring against Tahon, and Samdak explained to him that it would be impossible to beat a pro as a regular person. Hoban was shocked by this, and hoped that there would still be a solution. Hoban thought that he will die and lose his YouTube channel. Suddenly Samdak said that there was a way if the fight took place outside of a ring. Samdak said that Hoban needed to stop a Taekwondo fighter's dangerous roundhouse kick. Therefore, in order to win, Hoban should ensure that his opponent can no longer use his feet. At that moment he understood what Samdak was getting at, and learned that he had to influence the environment. Hoban planned to choose a day for the fight when it was raining. Besides, he started training his calf kick again, and he continued to go to the public bath to improve his stamina. After he finished his stamina training, he learned that the techniques he had learned would not help him in battle. But Samdak revealed to Hoban that he needed to learn how to tackle like an NFL player. So he did another strange training program and hoped to become stronger. A few days later, his friends visited him, and Snapper was frightened when he found Hoban in a closet. Hoban was a weirdo, and the chat was scared too. Then Hoban explained that he was training his core muscles, and he was completely exhausted. Next he stood up like a zombie, and the chat loved watching Hoban by his weird-looking workout. Meanwhile, Snapper told him to stop the nonsense, but Gale explained that Hoban was building his body to withstand Tahon's kicks. Suddenly, Gale wanted to help Hoban by his training, and Hoban was seriously injured. Snapper was jealous, and he filmed Hoban getting stomped in the stomach. The day came a few weeks later, and Hoban was very nervous. Hoban planned to fight Tahon into a narrow alley and wait for a rainy day. The weather forecast reported that it will rain for the next few days. At school, Snapper told him that the weather forecast was wrong, and Hoban was shocked because his plan would no longer work. He was desperate and imagined being beaten by Tahon again. Also, he remembered how he was embarrassed because of Pakgo. Because of this, he started running towards home in fear. Then we see Tahon and he was watching Hoban's live stream. A few moments later, Hoban appeared in the toilet and Hoban sprayed him with baby oil while he was peeing. He said to Tahon no diddy, and Hoban had planned to fight him in the boys' bathroom from the start. Then he started the fight against a pro, and he tried to tackle his opponent. Suddenly Tahon punched Hoban in the face and looked down at Hoban. Hoban was surprised that Tahon was also strong with his fists. Meanwhile, Snapper and his fans were worried because Hoban was being smoked. Hoban didn't give up, and he attacked his opponent with a strong calf kick. The chat noticed that Hoban was wearing water shoes and that he was able to do kicks without any problems. Hoban was glad he bought it, because it kept him from slipping on the baby oil. Afterwards, he smiled into the camera, and was convinced that he could win the fight. However, Hoban realized that his opponent was very fast, and Tahon prepared to attack. Hoban wondered why Tahon hadn't slipped. Hoban was then hit in the face and was unable to avoid the attacks. Suddenly he looked at Tahon's feet, and the chat understood that Hoban's opponent was a goat. However, Hoban couldn't run away, and he decided to counterattack. He managed to land his calf kick with full force, and didn't give up the fight. Then he tried to land with a second calf kick, but Tahon attacked with his fist at the same time. Snapper wondered why his friend kept shouting his technique before attacking. Suddenly, he realized that maybe it was Hoban's plan, like the fight against Pakgo. A few moments passed, and Hoban managed to lure Tahon into his trap. He used his tackling skill against Tahon. Then we learned that Hoban was taught how to tackle properly by Samdak, because he used the tackle incorrectly when fighting Pakgo. But this time he grabbed his opponent's legs, and he managed to get Tahon to the ground. Meanwhile, Snapper was impressed by Hoban, and thought that he could become a skillful NFL player. At that moment, Hoban remembered the words of Samdak, who had taught him that a pro fighter was not so easy to defeat. He tried his new technique, the cross choke, and crossed his arms around Tahon's neck. Also, he remembered how hard he had trained and hoped that his opponent would faint immediately. A few moments passed and Hoban realized that his cross choke wasn't working. He made a mistake because he became impatient and forgot lesson 1: never get worked up. Hoban couldn't believe he had failed after his hard training. Then Tahon looked down at Hoban and he wanted to show Hoban something. Suddenly Hoban saw that Tahon had managed to steal one of his shoes. At the same time, he remembered Samdak saying that a regular person can only win against a Taekwondo fighter if he can stop the kicks. Hoban knew he screwed up and didn't know what to do next. Then we see Munseong, who was watching Viral Hits livestream. Meanwhile, Bomi was still angry at Hoban for ignoring her calls. She wasn't planning on watching the livestream, but she couldn't resist because Hoban got crispy mushroom head Riz. Then Munseong turned off his phone because he didn't want to show Bomi how Hoban might lose the fight. However, we see how Hoban lost his hope and looked desperately into the void. He realized that his one-punchman training was for nothing. The viewers cheered him on and they spammed W in the chat. Suddenly, Snapper talked some sense into him and reminded Hoban that he wanted to get rich on YouTube. As a result, he got his motivation back and planned to win the fight to get filthy rich. After he got up, Tahon kicked him in the stomach with a powerful kick. Hoban almost lost consciousness, and he remembered Samdak's words. He couldn't do anything and attacked desperately, but his attacks couldn't reach Tahon. So he was cornered with wild roundhouse kicks. Snapper begged Tahon to stop, but he showed no mercy in this fight. He attacked Hoban again and smashed him into the wall. Snapper was desperate because his best friend had become a smashburger. Afterwards, Tahon teased Hoban and made fun of him. Next, he wanted to get Hoban's YouTube channel. Snapper said stop, and Tahon got angry. That's when Tahon realized that Snapper was begging Hoban to stop, but he had no intention of giving up. He became even stronger after being injured and transformed into a Super Saiyan 2. He then entered a bathroom stall and prepared for round 2. Snapper didn't want his friend to die and begged him to stop. Then we learned that Hoban didn't give up because he liked money so much, but because he was a true brother. So he kept fighting because he planned to avenge his friend, and the viewers should comment W's in the chat. Meanwhile, Tahon was sure that Hoban had no chance. He then attacked with his strongest roundhouse kick. Suddenly, Hoban used the technique he had been practicing for a month. He managed to get Tahon to the ground again, and this time he planned to finish it. Next, he focused all his power and began his final attack. Munseong was shocked at this because Hoban had used a perfect baseball choke. At that moment, Tahon got an emotional damage because he had viewed Hoban as a toy. But the mushroom head, who was a weakling at the beginning, overwhelmed him. Additionally, he remembered the day when he suffered a terrible defeat against UFC fighter Munseong. Then Tahon started to tap out, and Snapper understood his friend had won. He congratulated Hoban, but Hoban didn't realize that the fight ended. The reason for this was that adrenaline was released in Hoban's body, and he almost killed his opponent. Snapper stopped his friend, but Hoban counted to 10 because Samdak taught him never to let his guard down. By the time Hoban counted to 10, Tahon was unconscious. It resulted that Tahon remembered Munseong reaching out to him after his last MMA fight. Then he woke up and he wondered what Hoban and Snapper were up to. He tried to strangle Hoban, but Hoban said he was worried. He also handed Tahon the watch he had dropped. The watch was very important to Tahon, and he admitted defeat. Before he left, he threatened Hoban, and he didn't want to show that he respected Hoban. Afterwards, Hoban started acting strange and said he was sweating. He started advertising a body spray and he looked like a Diddy toy by doing it. So he added advertising, and the viral hit stream ended. In the evening, Gail edited the livestream into a great video. She included lots of effects and emojis, and her video went viral. A few days passed, and Hoban reached 190,000 subscribers, and he thanked his fans for that. A few days later, we see Bomi at McDonald's watching Hoban's new uploaded video. Suddenly, a big guy talked to her, and he tried to rizz her up by ordering 100 Krabby Patties. Then she brought him the 100 Krabby Patties he had ordered, and he asked for her number. He got rejected, and the huge guy left the store. After this, Bomi seemed to be sad, because Hoban didn't call her back yet. Next, some people in Chinatown had trouble transporting a 200k pig. Suddenly, Hang Ming appeared, and he easily carried the 200-kilogram heavy meat on his shoulders. Meanwhile, he was watching Viral Hit, and he planned to beat up Hoban to go viral himself. Afterwards, we see Hoban at school, and he was happy that his latest video had gone viral. A few moments later, Snapper noticed that Hoban was much tougher than he looked because he had immediately recovered from the fight. Then Hoban said that he thinks Tahon isn't such a bad guy. When he gave him the watch back, he was sure that he wasn't like the other thugs who used to bully him. Next, Hoban learned that Tahon's fight went viral because a lot of girls thought he was hot. Suddenly, Hoban took back his words that Tahon was a good guy, because he was jealous that many girls got a crush on Tahon because of his handsome face. In the afternoon, we see Gael, and she was startled on her desk. Then some thugs from their class showed up and started making fun of Gael. They started a live stream and wanted to exploit her for their prank videos. Gael tried to stop her, but the thugs pushed her to the ground. They also refused to delete the video and started making fun of Hoban's fighting techniques. Gael became angry and attacked one of the thugs, but her attack failed. After that, two girls started sandwiching her and insulting Gael. She started crying and was bullied. At that moment, Snapper showed up, but he was useless and got beaten up. The lower-class thugs made fun of Snapper, and one was planning to slap Gael. Suddenly, Hoban appeared and tried to stop the leader. He looked at Hoban but made fun of him because he was short. Hoban didn't know what to do and asked what their problem is. However, the leader asked if Hoban wanted to spar with him and began to humiliate him. He got angry and he realized that they were nothing compared to Tahon. After this, he planned to play it cool and asked for 100 yen like Tahon. The thugs couldn't believe he was imitating Tahon and gave Hoban 100 yen without complaining. Next, the leader tried to attack Hoban, but Top G Munseong saved them. Hoban and his friends were happy that Munseong showed up and stopped the fight. Meanwhile, Snapper noticed that Gael had a grudge against her bullies. They also learned that the thugs were making prank videos and Snapper was planning to show off. Snapper explained to Hoban that they need revenge for making Gael sad. Then Hoban tried to cheer up Gael, and she started to blush. In the evening he went to sleep, and Hoban remembered what Munseong told him. He thanked Munseong for his help, and Munseong told Hoban to call Bomi back. He was ashamed because he had embarrassed himself in front of Bomi. Then we see Gael, and she was acting like a pervert because she was thinking about how Hoban came to save her. Next, she texted Hoban, and she planned to seduce him. A few hours later, Bomi was working at McDonald's again, and she was terrified because Hang Ming always stared at her every day like a creep. Suddenly, Hoban appeared, and he ordered a strawberry parfait with baby oil flavor. Then he learned that Bomi was really mad at him. Hoban understood that he shouldn't have ignored her for 2 months, but he had been embarrassed after he had to take off his pants in front of her. Then Bomi saw the apology that Hoban wrote on his hand and she started to laugh. At the same time, Gael appeared and she unintentionally disturbed Hoban's game. However, Hoban asked why she was looking for him. Meanwhile, Bomi didn't understand what was going on, but she realized that Gael was cute. Gael planned to rizz up Hoban, but she decided to do the right thing and told Bomi that Hoban had asked her to bring her a gift. He also told Bomi that Hoban talked every day about how much he missed Bomi. Following this, Bomi understood that Hoban still has feelings for her. As a result, she decided to forgive him. He planned to spam her with a lot of messages, and Gael said goodbye. Gael was sad, but she knew he was in love with Bomi. A few moments later, she went home and tried to forget that embarrassing day. The next day, Hoban wrote Bomi a message and she was happy about it. Then someone threw a fake snake at her. She tripped, and the thugs from Hoban's school said it was a prank. They asked if they could post the video on YouTube. Meanwhile, Bomi was confused and a car appeared heading towards her direction. Later on, we see Hoban watching the comedy crew's prank videos. He realized that they were the guys who were bullying Gael. Besides, he was surprised that the thugs kindly apologized to the woman after their prank. Then Snapper said that their viewers don't know that the comedy crew are bullies, and Hoban learned that they have over 700,000 subscribers. Hoban was jealous and he wanted to do such pranks too. Snapper explained to Hoban that they also do other pranks that are very popular with viewers. However, Snapper suggested doing 3 fight videos a week, but Hoban was totally against it and used his baseball choke. As Gale was analyzing their edits, the comedy crew gang showed up. A girl in their group made fun of Hoban because he was thin. Then they also started bullying Hoban's friends and insulting them. Hoban and his friends were annoyed, but they tried to stay calm. A few moments later, the thugs were about to leave and they made fun of Viral Hit because the channel only has 190,000 subscribers. Hoban replied that he would upload a prank video too, but Snapper explained that it wasn't as easy as he thought. While Snapper was talking, Hoban received a message from Bomi and stopped listening. Suddenly, he learned the bad news that Bomi was in the hospital. In the evening, we see Bomi in the hospital, and she was lucky that she wasn't hit by Truck-kun, who would isekai'd her to another world. She then explained to Munseong how she fell on the street after a prank because of the newtubers who call themselves the comedy crew. She sprained her leg, and a car almost hit her. Then she said that the comedy crew laughed at her, even though she was almost hit by a car. Suddenly, Hoban appeared in the room and was angry after hearing the story. She said she was fine, and he started apologizing for no reason. Next, he sent her a message instead of talking to her because he wanted to get revenge for Bomi. He then walked out of the room and identified himself as Marvel's Punisher to complete that job. Then we learned that Hoban followed the loser code, and it was don't act up in front of strong fighters. At that moment, he remembered how the underclass thugs had bullied him. However, he met up with his friends and started the live stream to fight against them. A few days before the fight, he watched a tutorial on how to beat multiple opponents. The next morning, Snapper asked Hoban why he had changed his mind about fighting the comedy crew. Hoban answered for love and was confident of victory. Afterwards, he told Snapper that he has a strategy that he will use. In the meantime, the comedy crew continued filming pranks, and in the first video, they pretended to be the Yakuza. The next video was one in which they pretended to smoke although they were underage. They went viral with the 2 videos and knew they would make a ton of money from it. The crew members said they planned to use the money to buy new off-white clothes. Then we see the Viral Hit gang who spied on the comedy crew. Hoban told Snapper that he learned from Bomi that most of comedy crew's videos are most likely staged. Then Snapper started looking for evidence that the comedy crew was faking their pranks. He looked at the elevator prank and noticed that something was wrong there. Hoban also realized that the buttons weren't being pressed and was shocked about it. Then Snapper said that most people don't pay attention to it because her content was very entertaining. Next, he checked out the video of the cops and he suspected that the cops didn't show up for smoking, but it was just a coincidence that the police were nearby. Suddenly Rumi appeared, wanting to prank Hoban. She suggested doing a prank together, but Hoban refused to do a staged prank and said that she should do a video with the comedy crew. Later we see Rumi, who had done a staged prank with the comedy crew, and she thanked Hoban for the idea. Afterwards, she spoke badly about YouTube viewers who fall for staged pranks. The leader of the comedy crew agreed with her because he would do anything for money like Logan Paul. Additionally, they said they like to scam their viewers so they can buy new Gucci tracksuits. A few moments later, Rumi asked if they wanted to make more videos. So the leader of the comedy crew said that he plans to make a video to expose Viral Hit. The reason for this was that they believed that the fight between Hoban and Tahon was staged. Then he told that viewers will love the exposing video, and Viral Hit will go down. Rumi looked shocked, and she tried to convince them not to do that. Then she planned to stay out of it, but the comedy crew blackmailed her. They had filmed a video of her insulting her subscribers as stupid. At that moment, Rumi was playing the Uno reverse card, and she had also recorded a video. However, Rumi revealed that she did a collab with Viral Hit to expose the comedy crew. Then Hoban and his gang showed up, and they began to make their next move. Suddenly Hoban looked at his opponents, and he tried to act like a blood member. Meanwhile, the leader of the comedy crew realized that something was wrong, because Hoban was standing in front of him, but he had grown 2 heads taller. We then learned that Samdak's video had taught Hoban how to fight multiple opponents at once. Samdak said that as a regular he has no chance of winning against multiple opponents. Then he said he was just kidding and started the first lesson. Hoban learned that the first step would be to intimidate his opponents. Because of this, Hoban behaved like Scarface, and he had an even more frightening aura than Baki Hanma. Next he ran towards his opponents and they also sensed the Baki Hanma aura. Suddenly he lost his shoe and his bluff was seen. The comedy crew understood his trick, and Hoban realized that he screwed up. Following this, Hoban began to run away, and the comedy crew gang chased after him. One of the thugs caught up with Hoban and attacked, but Hoban used his forehead to block the punch. He also instinctively countered with a calf kick. After that, Hoban wondered why his kick hadn't worked. At the same time, Munseong was watching the live stream and his friends underestimated Hoban. So Munseong told his friends that Hoban had practiced the calf kick 10,000 times in 1 month. Then we see two of the comedy crew gang and they couldn't move anymore. They were shocked by this and Munseong noticed that something was odd. That's when an MMA champion declared that Hoban's intimidation worked. He explained that Hoban intimidation caused them to see him like a huge gorilla. Suddenly Hoban started to look like a hentai, and he started to love fighting. Next, Gale interrupted Hoban's fight, and she threatened the comedy crew to hurt one of their friends. The leader decided to retreat because he was afraid. The girl wondered why her boyfriend didn't want to fight and retreated. Hoban was disappointed because of the adrenaline he was hyped up and he wanted to keep fighting. However, viral hit ended the live stream, and Hoban was confused because it was the first time he felt some excitement by fighting. The next day, the exposing video was uploaded and the comedy crew got cancelled from YouTube. Then we see Gale, and she was no longer bullied by her classmates. Then we learn that Viral Hit got more subscribers and earned enough money for a Lambo from the exposure video. Next we see Bomi, who was walking home and she felt like someone was stalking her. Hoban offered to walk her home, but she didn't want to cause Hoban any trouble. Suddenly she bumped into a huge stomach, and she realized that in front of her was this guy who was always looking at her like a creep. Hang Ming was about to touch her, but someone stopped him. Munseong planned to punish Hang Ming for stalking Bomi. However, Hang Ming intended to become violent and Munseong used Samdak's lesson 1. He tried to get the opponent worked up and Hang Ming wondered why he tried to copy Hoban. Then Munseong wanted to do the next move and he talked just like Samdak. Next we learn that UFC champion Logan Gracie was the person who discovered Munseong's great talent. However, Munseong was a super rookie and he used a special MMA technique against Hang Ming. But the Surium wrestler Hang Ming was unstoppable and tried to counter. He tried to slam Munseong into the ground, but Munseong easily dodged. Afterwards, Hang Ming wanted to attack his opponent, but accidentally caused Bomi to trip. At the same time, Hoban had seen it and he appeared out of nowhere to save Shotty. He ran towards Hang Ming, who immediately grabbed him by the neck. Hoban couldn't do anything and was rammed into the ground. The reason for this was that Hang Ming was doing Korean wrestling. He was the champion, but there was one thing he liked more than Surium wrestling. That was cute girls, but the girls were always disgusted by him. Because he was always rejected by girls, he hated handsome guys like Munseong. Then we see how he beat a group of guys up who acted cool in front of him. The next day, Hoban got an emotional damage, and his friends tried to cheer him up. He embarrassed himself again in front of Bomi, and was ashamed of being a weak loser. Then we learned that the fear he felt this time was the biggest he had ever experienced. Snapper advised Hoban not to fight Hang Ming this time, explaining to him that a caterpillar cannot win against a wild boar. Suddenly Gale discovered a video of Hang Ming. He had posted Hoban's defeat on YouTube, and his post went viral. However, Hoban had to explain himself to his fans, and Snapper was stressed. Gale asked Hoban if he planned to fight Hang Ming, but Snapper didn't want to let him do that and forbade him to fight against Hang Ming. Hoban agreed with him that he would die against such a huge pig, but deep in his heart he wanted to fight. In the evening, Snapper explained to their fans that Hoban's fight with Hang Ming was just a misunderstanding. His plan worked and Hoban didn't have to fight Hang Ming. Then Bomi wrote and she asked Hoban not to fight Hang Ming. He didn't know what to do and watched a YouTube video. Suddenly Samdak uploaded a video and told him that Surium wrestler is not a striker. Hoban learned that it would be impossible for a beginner to defeat a grappler. Although Hoban understood that victory was impossible, the desire to face Hang Ming grew within him. He remembered the fights before and understood the reason for his desire. A few days passed. Snapper got a call, and he was talking on the phone while driving. Meanwhile, Hoban went to Chinatown, and he told Snapper that he planned to challenge Hang Ming. Then we learned that Hoban understood that he loved fighting because he became addicted to adrenaline. He knew that he had to listen to his heart and drove to Chinatown motivated. However, he found Hang Ming and challenged a beast to battle. Suddenly he started to tease Hang Ming and made fun of Hang Ming's name. Then he touched Hang Ming's breasts and his opponent thought he was tripping. A few moments later, Snapper showed up and he started a live stream. Tahon was surprised because Hoban was nuts to fight a Surium champion. At that moment he remembered Hoban visiting him in the dojo. Hoban asked Tahon to teach him the powerful roundhouse kick. Suddenly Tahon started kicking him and Hoban almost fainted out. He was lucky that he had prepared for this and used books as a shield. The next moment, he realized that Tahon hadn't kicked harder with his full force. Then Hoban started begging Tahon to help him. He told Tahon that Taekwondo was the strongest sport, and with these words he was able to convince Tahon to train him. Next, Hoban began his attack, and he felt adrenaline rushing through his body. He used his calf kick and was excited because he hit his opponent with full force. Snapper and the viewers were impressed by his solid hit. Hoban suddenly realized that his calf kick had caused no damage. Hang Ming only felt a tickle, and Hoban attacked with a series of calf kicks. Hang Ming, with his crispy mushroom hairstyle, was like the Great Wall of China, and he was planning on getting serious. Then Hoban remembered the advice to run away by fighting against a strong beast. Broski was running backwards and his fans thought he was tripping. Meanwhile, Snapper hyped up the viewers and talked about how strong Hoban had become. He said that they should wait and believe that the calf kick would have an immediate effect on Hang Ming. Suddenly he learned from a spectator that a Surium wrestler would not be harmed by a calf kick. Then Hang Ming began to chase Hoban. He trained to run at full speed on the sand every day. Because of this, Hoban's calf kick didn't work, and he applied the next lesson he learned from Samdak. He hit Hang Ming in the face while running, but his attack had no effect. Hang Ming was like a water Pokemon that was attacked with flamethrower. Then he remembered Samdak's words that a beginner couldn't beat a grappler, but he didn't want to give up and tried to use the baseball choke. Hoban realized that his opponent was a bodybuilder on bulk who had a thick neck. As a result, he couldn't use baseball chokes, and he came up with the idea of ruining Hang Ming's crispy haircut. As Hoban grabbed his hair, Hang Ming used the front suplex. Hoban was slammed into the ground by the WWE move, leaving the viewers wondering if Hang Ming was an ugly version of John Cena ordered from Wish. Afterwards, Hang Ming held something strange in his hand and everyone thought that he ripped out Hoban's spine. Hoban behaved like a zombie from The Walking Dead. Snapper asked his friend to stop, but he didn't give up. He then clenched his fist, and he had no intention of losing as a striker. Meanwhile, Tahon was sure that Hoban could win, because he had taught Hoban a new technique. However, he planned to use the technique he learned from Tahon to become a rice cooker. The reason he ran backwards was to prepare his next move to cook his opponent. When he had enough distance, he made his move and hit Hang Ming with a powerful back kick. Then we see Tahon, who was angry. He yelled at his father for giving tutoring lessons to little children at their dojo. But his father explained to him that MMA is currently the most popular martial art, and for this reason only a few people want to learn Taekwondo. At that moment he decided to make Taekwondo popular and prove in the next MMA tournament that Taekwondo is the strongest. So we find out why Tahon decided to help Hoban. Hoban had to run backwards, and he wondered if Tahon was just trying to bully him. Tahon told him that it will help him, and it was a way to train his back kick. Back in the present, we see how Hoban's attack was a complete success. The reason for this was that he did a forbidden thing. He made fried eggs out of Hang Ming eggs, and his fans loved it. Despite everything, Hang Ming didn't go down, and he used a front suplex again. Everyone thought it was the end of Hoban, and he was desperately trying to grab something. Hoban managed to grab Hang Ming's hair, but it was a mistake. Hoban noticed that Hang Ming was wearing a wig, and everyone was shocked. However, they decided to stop the fight, and Hoban apologized to Hang Ming. He learned that his opponent was also just a loser who started wrestling to become cool. He thought that girls liked athletes, but his life didn't change. Then Hang Ming ate hair growth supplements and Hoban learned that he wasn't stalking Bomi. He thought Munseong was the stalker and just wanted to protect her. The reason for this was that he followed the lessons of a dating guru. They also learned that Hang Ming knows that he is a loser and that he only wanted to become famous on YouTube to get a girlfriend. Hoban and Snapper knew what it was like to be a loser, and they began to cry together. A few moments later, Hang Ming went home, and he was planning to give up on getting a girlfriend. But Hoban wanted to help him, and he encouraged his fans to support his new friend. Next, Hoban told his new friend that he shouldn't give up, and that he should keep doing YouTube to get a girlfriend someday. The live stream ended, and Bomi was happy how everything was solved. Meanwhile, Tahon also watched the live stream, and he was proud of Hoban, because he showed in his video that Taekwondo was the strongest martial art. At night, Gail edited the video with Hang Ming, and she was surprised that Hang Ming was a nice guy. Furthermore, the video went viral, and viral hit reached 300,000 subscribers. The next day, Snapper celebrated their success on YouTube. Suddenly he got a message and looked shocked about it. In the afternoon, Hoban went to visit his mother, and his mother noticed that her son seemed very happy. The reason for this was that he had repaid the debt from his mother. Afterwards, he found out that a nurse wanted to talk to him. A few moments later, Hoban learned that his mother might recover after surgery. Hoban began to cry with joy, and he planned to pay the cost immediately. Also, he told Bomi about the good news and she was happy for him. Then we see Hoban's friends and he told Snapper about the news. Snapper congratulated him and Hoban began to smile.